We're in part 2 in our series, Home Sweet Home. And it kind of worked out. We had a baby dedication in the early service. Old Finn Nadzadi was dedicated. His whole family was here. It was really cool. But to review last week, real quick, we've been going through the Beatitudes and applying those to our home lives. Last week we talked about blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, or godly living, or living for the glory of God. And so we talked about, okay, what if I'm not hungering and thirsting for that? My appetite isn't what it should be. Well, you need to change your appetite, change what you're eating. And we talked about some ways to do that, some ways not to do that. One way not to do it was legalistic Christianity, where you reduce your relationship with Jesus to just a bunch of do's and don'ts. Check this box, check that box. And then the other opposite would be lukewarm Christianity, where you're Christian in name, but not so much in practice. So we talked about those two polar opposites, and if you want to watch a sermon, it's on our website, bridgewayamelia.church. Then we talked about 3 ways you can create a hunger for God in your home. And one way was to involve God in your daily conversations, not just reducing it to just a bedtime ritual, but for God to permeate all aspects of your life. And the Lord reminded us about that this week. We took a vacation, and we were supposed to take vacation in August, and then Whitney got pregnant, so it was her fault, right, that we are going on vacation
I don't think it was
in April. But that sermon's not about that today, okay? All right, let me get back on track. But we went on a cruise, and we were on a beach, and we were eating lunch, or getting ready to eat lunch. They provide all these hamburgers and stuff, and you go to this big area where they got picnic tables set up, and there was a couple older gentlemen there, and I'm like, hey, can we sit with y'all? And they said, sure. I said, okay, we're going to pray for our food. And so we gave thanks for our food, and the old guy next to me leans back, and he looks at me, and when I'm done, he's like, you're doing a good job, son. And I was like, thanks. And he proceeded to tell me about how Jesus had changed his life, that he grew up in church and knew all the rituals and all that, but he didn't really become a Christian until later in his life. And he just talked about how wonderful Jesus is and the change that Jesus had made. And it was weird because he's like, where are y'all from? He lived in Tennessee. And I said, well, we're from Cincinnati, Ohio. And he said, you know a little place called Milford? I was like, yeah, I know Milford. And he told me we're pastor of church in Amelia, and he said, oh, okay. And he grew up in Milford, so small world, right? And said he'd come visit us sometime when he's back in Ohio to visit family. But he proceeded to give his testimony, and then his buddy across the table proceeded to give his testimony. I thought, man, this is really cool. My kids were kind of paying attention, but they were still hearing adults talk about Jesus, and it wasn't church. It was life, everyday life. And this was a little personal thing God did in me. We were sitting on the deck or whatever, and the kids are in the pool area. And I'm like, I'm just going to go sit and look at the ocean for a little bit. And so I sit down there and looking at the big Atlantic Ocean. And Whitney thinks I'm weird because I make new friends wherever I go. I'm that weird guy talking to the other weird guy, Like I have a buddy, a Facebook friend in Alabama. I met him one time, and it was at some water park, and I don't know how we got into the subject of God and stuff, but he was a Christian, and his name's Frank. So Frank might be watching. Hey, Frank. But anyways, there's this worker. He's standing on the rail. He's standing by the rail, and he's like, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And God was like, okay, Brent, you see, I'm the one who created that, so you got to incorporate me in some way in this conversation. I was like, all right, Lord. And so I was like, yeah, man, it's pretty awesome. We got talking. His name was Primlov Tizik with another in it. I tried saying his name. He's like, just call me Tim. Because I was telling Whit, I think heaven's going to look like a cruise ship. Because one, I think there's going to be great food. But two, all the workers on a cruise ship are from all over the world. I mean, they're all over the place. And I was like, I think that's what heaven's going to look like. Just people, all shapes and sizes and colors. And there's heaven. And we've got a great buffet or something, And he's from Kyrgyzstan. I hope I said that right. I have no idea where that's at. And so I'm like, where's that at? He says, it's south of Russia. It was part of the USSR, and he's going into it. And so we just start talking about differences and, what's the cool sport to play over there. And, of course, it's soccer or football, however you want to say it. And he was asking me about baseball because he's like, I don't understand your baseball. He was like, this, and they're doing this. He didn't know what a throw was. His English is kind of broken up. He didn't know what swing the bat was. And I'm like, don't worry, man. I said, it's as boring as it looks. And he's like, yeah, it was very boring to watch. I said, yeah. And I said, so why'd you work on a Carnival cruise? And I wanted to see America. And he's like, well, what do you think of America? And he's like, they're very friendly. And I'm thinking, he hasn't been to Michigan yet, right? He hasn't been to Michigan. Oh, come on. Anybody from Michigan? Oh, no! Listen, guys. I'm not getting out of this, am I? There's a few nice people from Michigan. It happened in the early service, too. Brenda is from Michigan, so I'm just going to move on now. So anyways, we started talking about God and faith. I'm like, hey, what's the main religion in Kyrgyzstan? He's like, we're Muslim, and there's some Christians, and he's like, we have Jesus in our religion too, and he's like, I think we're all just trying to do the same thing ultimately, and I'm like, well, not exactly, because I wanted to portray to him in a loving manner the truth, because I think that's what the pursuit is, right? We're pursuing what's true. And so I said, he was telling me about Jesus being a prophet, and I was like, okay, well, this is, we just celebrated Easter, which he didn't know what the word Easter meant in our language. And so he just kind of had this weird look on his face. And I said, we celebrated the resurrection of Jesus, because we believe that Jesus not only came and lived, but he died, and then 3 days later he resurrected, which proved that he was God in the flesh, which means everything he taught is real. And we live our lives by that as Christians. And unfortunately, our conversation got cut short because he was on break and they called him on the radio. And I got his name. I'm trying to find him on Facebook, but if you put in the name Primlov, either I'm going to be like talking with a Nigerian prince, getting a bunch of money, or I'm working on finding them, though, so we can continue a conversation. But my prayer is, God, use that everyday conversation, and my prayer is that Tim would think about Jesus and who he is. Is he who he claims to be? And maybe he is. And maybe, I hope he's having those thoughts, that he'll investigate Jesus for himself. And my prayer is he comes to the same conclusion that so many of us have come to, that Jesus is the Savior of the world. But the point being is we should include Jesus in our everyday conversations and let God guide that. I mean, I could easily have been like, I'm on vacation, I'm relaxing, I really don't want to talk to anybody. Allow God to interrupt you. Okay? That builds a hunger and a thirst for righteousness. We talked about that last week. We also talked about making church non-negotiable. That when something is beneficial for our children, we make them do it. Why? Because we are the parents. We are in charge. They are not. I use the illustration of we make them go to school. Why? Because education is important. It is needful for them and shaping them and molding them and them getting a proper education to be a functioning member of society and getting the job that they'll need to get. So we make them go to school. And the kids are pumped that I'm saying this right now. But so many times, I've heard this, and I mentioned it last week, we say we want them to kind of choose their own way when it comes to faith. And listen, faith is so incredibly important. As important as our education is, faith it trumps it by far. Why? Because at the end of the day, our faith in Jesus is, it's it. It affects everything. And it'd be foolish for us to think we're going to let our kids navigate these spiritual waters without our help. Because it's interesting waters to navigate. So, with that being said, make church a non-negotiable. Make church something that, okay, we're going to church. This is what we're going to do. Why? Because we want to be a part of the faith family. We want people to who have the same convictions we have the same faith that we have, rubbing shoulders together. We want to be a part of that. And then, of course, parents don't leave it to just Sunday, but the rest of the week that we have these faith conversations. Number 3 was show them how serving God is fun, how serving Jesus is an exciting event. That faith, if your faith is boring, you're doing it wrong. That faith is an exciting adventure, and your kids can be in on that. All right, so that's kind of a quick review of last week. Let's get to Matthew 5:8 and find out what we're talking about today. It says this: blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the pure in heart. We all want our families to be blessed. We talked about that. No one wants their family to not be blessed. We want to have a blessed home. So how do we do this? Again, we're looking at the teachings of Jesus. We are Christians, most of us. Maybe you're not and you're still searching. That's cool. We're thankful you're here. We as Christians want our homes to be blessed. And so we're going to need to follow the teachings of Jesus. It just makes sense. So blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. We protect our homes, right? I mean, you lock your doors and all that good stuff. Like at my house, we have a long driveway, and we have a gate, and so we lock that every night. We have floodlights on the outside. It's like a compound almost. It's kind of freaky. But if you've been to my house at night, it's a freaky place to be. And we got the dogs outside. I have an alarm system called Smith & Wesson, and it's locked and ready to go. It is, because we want to protect what's valuable to us. And, you know, physical protection is a given. It's what you should do. Like, we took our kids to the beach, so we put sunscreen on them. I mean, at first, we didn't put enough sunscreen on them, okay? I'll take the fall for that one. Should have lathered them up a little bit better. But the next time we lathered them up, children of the 80s and 90s, you remember the movie that came out called Powder? Yep. That's what our kids looked like. After we were done getting all this sunscreen on them, we're like, multiple times too, because we wanted to protect them. Your kids riding a bike, they wear a helmet, or riding a horse, they put a helmet on them. They're going swimming, you put floaties on. Why? Because it's a no-brainer. We physically protect our kids. And yet, if you decide to protect the morality of your children, the innocence of your children, it almost seems in society as if you're being an overprotective parent. But we're to protect all aspects of our children. We want them to be pure in heart. And so there are certain gateways that we as parents should guard for our children, because we want them to be protected. So let's break down this verse, Matthew 5, verse 8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Now, what does Jesus mean when he's talking about the heart? He's not talking about the organ that's in your chest right now that's beating. He's not saying blessed are those who have pure veins and everything's flowing fine. That's not what he means. He's using a metaphor for our innermost being, our attitudes and our thoughts and our desires. He's saying, hey, blessed are those who are pure in their hearts, in their innermost being, for they shall see God. So he's just given us this illustration. So how do we have, pure hearts? How is that possible for us to be pure in our innermost being? Well, let me tell you how. First, let me give you the impossible part of that. You can't get cleaned up on your own, okay? Without Jesus, there will be no purity of your heart. Do you know why? It's because your heart and my heart is wicked. It's deceitful. In fact, check it out in Jeremiah 17. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. My heart, your heart, is deceitful and it is wicked at its core. I mean, that verse right there, it kind of ruins every Disney movie, right? Just follow your heart. Be who you are on the inside. The only one who gets it right, and we watched Moana 9,766 times, is the crab, where he says, don't follow your heart. Your grandma's wrong, or something along those lines. Anyways, moving on. The heart is deceitful. Being who I am, I know who I am on the inside, and I do not like that person. I cannot get cleaned up on my own. It is impossible apart from Jesus Christ to get cleaned up because I am a sinful creature. I have sinful tendencies, and I can't do it on my own. So there is no such thing as a pure heart apart from Jesus. Jesus is the common denominator. He's what changes everything. Let me give you another example in Ephesians, real quick. Ephesians 4. This I say, therefore, and testify in the Lord, that you should no longer walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk. Well, what's going on here? Well, Ephesus was a city where it was like ground zero for sexual immorality. I mean, this place was rampant with just sin, and people are coming to faith in Jesus, but then they're just having some issues in living like they should for the glory of Christ. And so Paul is saying, I'm testifying to you, hey, you shouldn't walk like you used to. You should be different. You should be walking like the rest of everybody else in the futility of their mind, the vanity of their mind. It's all about them. A Christian, our life should be not selfish, but selfless. Having their understanding darkened. Meaning, they're used to this darkness. They're used to not being in the light. As Scripture says, men love darkness rather than light. Why? Because their deeds are evil. See, Jesus confronts us about that. He says, your ways are not good. Your ways are wrong, and they need to be changed. And I'm the one who can change them. He says, their understanding is darkened, being alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the blindness of their heart. He's saying, you're a follower of Jesus, so act like it. Don't walk like you used to walk. Don't live like you used to live. You're a follower of Jesus, so act like it. Don't act like you're blind in your heart. You're not blind anymore. Get it together. So, with that being said, we should, as Christians, pay closer attention to the different gateways that we have. Gateways of influence, our eyes, our ears, what we see, what we hear. And you should have different gates set up for your children as well. Now, I can't stand up here as an expert. I've only been a parent for 5.5 years, okay? So it's not like I really know how to raise teenagers. I have no idea how to raise teenagers. I know what the Word of God says, and that's what I'm portraying to you. And I just think there are certain things that are probably going to be common sense. Like your teenagers probably shouldn't have unbridled access to a smartphone. I'm not saying they shouldn't have access, but unbridled access. Right? I grew up before, I remember when the internet became a thing, It's in my childhood when we had Netscape and AOL, and you had that dial-up sound when you got on the internet. We had all that thing, all those things, right? Before Google was even a thing, and all of that. But now, it's so different, right? In the palm of your hand is access to everything. Everything. And we have to, as parents, as Christians, we should be paying close attention to the access that we allow our children to have into that world. They're your kids. You have the right to say yes, to say no, to take stuff away, because you're the parent, you're in charge. And yes, to the best of your ability, you should dictate what they see and what they hear. I know you can't protect them 100% of the time. I know that. But you can to the best of your ability. My prayer, 20 years from now is to look back and think, Whit and I did the best that we could for the glory of Christ for our kids. And so there are gateways that you pay attention to. I wouldn't give my kid money to go see a movie that I didn't know what he was seeing, or I hadn't looked up what's going on in that movie, or to listen to music that I don't know about, right? Or not know all of their friends. Know who the influences are in your children's life. We have this short amount of time to control these different gateways, and we want our kids to be pure and to have a pure heart. Well, we've got to guard that heart to the best of our ability while they are with us. I like what Psalm 119 says this. He says this. How can a young man cleanse his way? By taking heed according to your word. With my whole heart I have sought you. Oh, let me not wander from your commandments. How can we get cleaned up? We go to God's word. I can't give you all the do's and don'ts for your family and for your household. It's your household. But what I can say is consult the word of God, pray, and then come to some conclusions of this is things we will do and these are some things we won't do. Whether you like it or not, because I'm the parent. I'm in charge. And I believe this is what God would have us to do. Remember, we want our homes to be Christ-centered homes, meaning we filter everything through Jesus. And if there's anything questionable there, we do away with it. Christ-centered is what we're going for, where Jesus calls the shots, not us. So how do we effectively input this as parents, or even as grandparents, or aunts and uncles? Because listen, when our kids are grown, it doesn't mean you get off the hook. Because I'm 34 years old. And I stand up here as an adult. I guess I've reached that. But I don't stand up here as an expert on all there is to life. In fact, those of you who are older than I, you're not off the hook. So my kids are grown and great. No, you need to show the rest of us what it looks like to serve Jesus when we're 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80. You don't stop serving Jesus just because your kids are grown or you reach a certain age, right? You're still an example whether you like it or not. You can be an example to those of us who, okay, when you finish strong. When you're 70, 80, however old it is, you finish strong. Like our buddy Glenn over he's in Tanzania now. You guys remember Glenn, the guy who preached for 3 hours a couple of months ago? It was a great 3 hours, let me tell you. But this morning he was talking about they were digging something out. He goes his car or whatever. It's the rainy season, but he's this almost 70-year-old man, and believed God wanted him to go to Africa and serve there. And he'll tell you, I'm doing the same thing in Africa I was doing here. I was serving Jesus faithfully, and then God said, go here. So that's what I'm doing. He's a great example to me. Just finish strong, no matter how old you are. And I'm not saying God's going to send you to Africa, but he may, I don't know. But he may just say, hey, just serve faithfully in your local church, serve faithfully in the community in which I've left you. Be an example. So, how can we create a culture of being pure in heart in our homes, in our church? Number one is to get your own heart right. It starts with you. Get your own heart right. No matter how old you are, no matter what life stage you are in, Christian, get your own heart right. Proverbs 4:23. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. What is your heart like right now? I can't answer that, but I do believe if I asked if you were pure in heart, you could answer that question yes or no to yourself. You could answer that. Are you pure in heart? Are you keeping your heart with all diligence? Guarding the gateways. Don't allow, listen, maybe you're thinking, I don't know where I'm at with that. Let me just kind of help diagnose some symptoms here. One, don't pay to be entertained by sinful things. Okay? Just don't. If you're putting things before your eyes and in your ears and allowing things in you, and you have to rationalize or try to justify it, you might want to stay away from that. If your train of thought starts with, this isn't as bad as, fill in the blank, or it's not really that bad, because if that's how it starts, that's your first warning sign to whatever comes after that, you need to stay away from. Again, I'm not going to present legalistic Christianity and say, here's all the boxes and you need to check them. I'm just saying you need to look inwardly, and if you're wrestling with some of those things, then yeah, maybe there needs to be some changes in your life. Christians who their heart is becoming hard or not what God wants them to be, a couple things I believe happen to them. One, they lose complete passion for anything godly. That can be reading the Word, it can be praying, it can be serving, it all becomes a chore. And then they become very nitpicky of the local church. And listen, Bridgeway is not perfect. We're not. I'm your pastor, right? That should be your first given. We're not perfect. But those who are having some heart issues will pick apart everything the church is trying to do and saying, well, I want to do it that way, you shouldn't do it this way, while at the same time not contributing anything, right? But there's this problem, I don't like this, and all you've become is a consumer. That the church should simply meet all of your needs because it's about you. This church doesn't exist because it's about you. It's about Jesus. Amen. And you should be here to serve him and to live for him and to do what he would have you to do. This church does not exist to meet your every single need. It exists for the glory of Christ, and he will meet your needs, okay? So, if you're having those issues within you, there's a heart problem. And I cannot fix that for you. And I will not try. It's not my job. This is between you and between Jesus. So, apparently you need to spend some time on your hands and knees and saying, Lord, I don't hunger and thirst for righteousness right now. Change my appetite. Lord, I'm not seeking purity in my life because I'm allowing things in me that shouldn't be in me. So you tell me what needs cut out and I'll cut it out. You tell me what I need to stop putting before my eyes or in my ears or whatever the influences are, and I will change it. Because I can't do that for you. And if you think just showing up here on Sunday is going to fix everything, you're dead wrong. This is a great, don't get me wrong, church is important, but if this is the extent of your spiritual interaction, you're missing the point completely. 100%. So get your own heart right. Stop blaming everybody else. Stop blaming the preacher. Stop blaming this person or that person. You're the problem, okay? You're the problem. I apply it like in marriage. One of the greatest marriage advices that Whit and I ever got was at a marriage conference. And the guy said, the biggest problem in your marriage will always be you. So the biggest problem in my marriage is always Brent. The biggest problem in Whitney's marriage is always Whitney. Because I can't change her and she can't change me, but God can change us. And I can make decisions and she can make decisions. So when it comes to your heart issues with the Lord, I can't change you. You've got to do something. The ball is in your court. So get your own heart right. Number 2, pursue perfect purity of heart. Pursue perfection? Are you kidding me? That's impossible. Well, okay, if you're not pursuing perfect purity, what's your other option? Anything less than perfect purity would be what? Impurity. No matter how small it might be, it's still impurity. Look at Ephesians chapter 5. But among you, there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality or any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. He says, not even a hint of any of those things. Why? Because that's not who you're supposed to be, Christian. It's improper for you to even have a hint of sexual immorality, impurity of any kind, greed, whatever it is. Not even a little bit. Once there's a little bit, then everything is impure. I used this example in the early service, and it bombed horribly. But I haven't come up with a different illustration yet. And I told the early service I was going to change it because it was so bad. But I've already started talking about it, so I might as well go ahead with it. So, here we go. Imagine I'm making a batch of brownies. Not those kind of brownies. I see what y'all are doing there. Imagine I'm making some brownies. And I put just a little bit of a dog nugget in there. Mix it around. Cut it up real nice. How many of y'all want one of my brownies? It's nasty. It's just a little bit impure. It was a horrible illustration at 9 o'clock, and it was a horrible illustration at 11:30. So, my point is this. Our goal should be to strive for perfect purity. That should be our goal. As we, as believers, didn't say blessed are the kind of pure in spirit, or the people who, they sort of try, but they won't really care. No, it's pure of heart. Pure. That's what we should strive for. I'm not saying it's easy. In fact, I would say it's probably difficult, but it's worth doing. Let's finish the verse. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. What does that mean? I mean, it's like a physical thing. I believe one day I'll physically see God in heaven. But I also believe I want to see God at work in my life, in Whitney's life, in Rhett and Addie, and the new baby. I want to see God at work in your lives. Nothing does more for a pastor when I see God working in your life. Like if there was, I guess that's how, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but that's it's amazing to me. And so, blessed are the pure in heart. They're going to see God do some things in their life that wouldn't happen otherwise. So if God's not really been doing a lot in your life, it may not be a God issue. In fact, I'm sure it's not. It's a you issue. There's a purity issue there that you've got to address, Christian. Well, what are you allowing through the gateways that you shouldn't be allowing? What are decisions you're making you shouldn't be making those kind of decisions? I can't answer that for you. But you need to talk to the one who can. All right, let's pray. Let's bow together this morning.